Hello, this is Dr. Sage Breslin, and you are here for Breaking Through. We are going to be joined today by Annie Leib.
Hi.
There it is.
Thanks
you
for
so
having
much.
me.
Yeah. It's just so fun getting to know you and getting to know your work and discovering that there's a lot that we do that has such similar qualities and similar foundations. So really excited to have you on today and get to know more about you and more how you.
As your introduction came on, I was reading all the words and I was like, yes, authenticity, intuition, inspiration. And it was so, I'm like, that's why I'm here. This makes total sense. Breaking through. So yay.
Well, so give me a clue. Tell me more and tell the audience more about what you're doing, how you're spending your time right now, what you're enjoying about your work and how your work has evolved.
Sure. And I have, a whole story of breaking through, but just to give a quick sort of bio, I am now the founder and CEO of Annie Leib, LLC, which is a coaching and personal development company, where we take people on a healing journey to a place we call the Soul Center. The Soul Center is a place of fulfillment, wholeness, personal freedom. And it's the place where you really want to get to from being heart-centered or mind-centered. And it really, Mike Paterano and I co-created the Breath Framework, which is what we focus most of our coaching on. And breath is an acronym for B, begin where you are. R is reclaim your power. E is excavate your core values. A is allow. T is through, and H is healing. P.S. Every time I do that, I'm like, please don't miss a letter. Please don't miss a letter. Like, it doesn't matter how, I've done it a gajillion times, but every time I'm like, is it E, is it A? So that's what breath stands for. Breath is a really important word to me, which I'll tell you about when I tell you about my whole breakthrough and journey. But when we co-developed it, it sort of mirrored our journeys through our healing paths, both together and apart, because we have a really close bond. And then we decided we would be remiss not to share this with people because we've reached such a place of amazing wholeness and fulfillment. And we're like, how do we share this? And that's what we did. We developed it, and then we started a company, and now it's growing by leaps. It's growing really quickly. I don't even know how to describe it. But we have a team of 12 right now, and it's continuing to rapidly grow due to some corporate clients that we're signing on with and just some amazing things, but implementing the breath framework. Besides that, I'm a mom of a dog named Randall and 2 kids, Sammy and Evie, who are away at camp. So I am all about work these days and leaning into me and who I am.
Yeah, I know. I think that we talked last time about what it was like to, have motherhood as a piece of who we are instead of the only thing we are. But that it is interesting when the kids slide away to go with friends or parents or camp, that then we're sort of immersed in us.
Who am
Right?
I? How do I define it? Yeah.
And we can slide into the workspace and even overwork, and it is really an interesting juggling act, I think, to say like, okay, let's create balance here. Just because my mom activities are, limited right now doesn't mean I should work 24 hours a day. How can I use the time to lean into
better
me?
myself. Yeah. And then, you make such a good point. It's such a good word, juggling, because when you're an entrepreneur and you are launching a business that's growing very quickly with a team that's growing really quickly, and it's very easy to say, but that's why I'm working 20 hours a day.
Right.
And then there's someone else that says, well, you're manic because you're sleeping 4 hours a night, like calm it down. But, there's a definite place where, the other day I had to say to myself, you're just not it's Saturday. Like, you're not going to do anything for work today.
Yeah.
That was a big deal for me. That was a really big deal for me. Oh my God, did you hear that barking? My dog is sleeping and he barked in his sleep because he plays in his sleep. So he was just barking and I was, woo, woo, woo. Sorry.
Chasing the rabbits again.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely. So yeah, it's definitely a crazy lesson in time management, because all of a sudden the kids and the sports and the back and forth between the houses and the school and the homework is taken out of it. And then it's like, I'm not really crazed right now, but I don't have a 9 to 5. This is not a 9 to 5 job, as you know. So when you're building something, it's like, how do I navigate that? So I'm working through that for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I notice I have 5 books on the market, and I have another 3 in the hopper. And one of the books is a memoir, and it's written in 4 parts. And the first part was really hard. Talk about like the early breakthroughs that allowed me to move into sort of the next space and stage of my life. And it was hard writing. And once I finished part 1, it was interesting. I was almost like, yeah, I can't do this right now. I've got to just let it be to the side. And I tried to come back and write, and somehow I couldn't dive in. And it's been 2 years. And all of the sudden, this past weekend, it just grabbed me. And I noticed, I spent 4 hours writing on Saturday, and the kids were doing stuff with their friends, and I wanted to go back 4 hours on Sunday and then work. Now it's the work week, and it's sort of like,
You were ready. You were really ready.
Yes.
And you had to allow that time and that space between it. That's very interesting that happened, because you could have easily been like pushed to the side and never looked at again, or something, that a project that you didn't finish, but it pulled you in to do it.
Yeah. I think that word launch, whether you're launching a business or a book or a life or a relationship, we have to just keep our eyes on, and keep our eyes on sort of the process, but also on ourselves. And
sure.
that soul-centered space, as you said, is we've got to just be open to what's happening for us the entire time, because literally we could go with a launch and be at it 24 hours a day. And then the next thing you know, you're not well, or you don't want to do it anymore, or you're burned out, or whatever. So
I'm with you. I'm with you completely. I understand. Life is filled with launches. As we evolve, we continue to launch, right? So
definitely.
It's all starting to make sense to me.
And as you've found, you launch a business, and then the business takes over, and you realize, oh, now I'm launching corporate projects, and now I'm launching, a coaching program so I can get my own coaches trained. And that scaling can be really an amazing process, and it can be daunting if you allow it to be. So I love that you have a framework below the surface that you can keep on going back to for yourself.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and you have to. This is a way of life. That's how we look at it. This is not like a one and done and you're healed. This is a framework that you can use in every aspect of your life, and it's a way to live. So you're exactly right. You took the words out of my mouth. Like it's a way to go back to it each time and each struggle, and get to a place of fullness and fulfillment.
Yeah. It's, I was saying before how we have, similar foundations for what we do. And the 4 pillars that came to me as I was doing my own work, that really stood up as a foundation for how I do breakthrough work are conscious connection. So connection to self. I love working with people who have spiritual connection, because then I can say connection to something greater than the self, and then connection to others. And then once you've kind of achieved that, and you can utilize it as, a place to move from, then working towards comprehensive clarity. And that clarity is really of the things that stand in your way. It's learning to use a big flashlight below the surface to see where the stuck places are. And so often they are not cognitive or conscious stuck places. They are things that are sitting in memory or belief systems or ideas or socialization. And sometimes it's helpful to have somebody else there to say, okay, and we're going to find, wow, there it is.
Yes.
And then when you find it, one of the things that I think is so different in traditional psychotherapy versus breakthrough coaching is traditional psychotherapy is not actually designed to resolve.
Right.
It's designed for process. It's designed for comfort. It's designed for symptom relief. But very few therapists, when they, okay, we spin down, we find, this event, this traumatic event that happened. And very few therapists will go to that younger version of the self and say, what can I do for you?
Mm-hmm.
How can we help you relinquish and surrender all of this material? And how can we get you out of the driver's seat, by the way, because you're 4 and you really shouldn't be driving this car.
Yes, exactly.
So really working on the respectful release once we've done resolution work. And that's something that I have found most of my clients kind of highlighting each time I do that process. And as you said, it's a process, Esther.
Yes,
I teach people
process,
so that they can do it on their own, but not everybody feels comfortable just doing it on their own. But it's amazing how people will say, like, how come I never did that before? How come it never occurred to me that younger version of me sitting down there hanging on to the events could be impacting me?
Yeah.
So
much so that it's running your life, that it's weighing you down like a cloak. Yeah. 100%.
So then doing the release work, and then, another thing that just makes me smile is people will do all this kind of work and then they'll say, okay, I'm going to go back to work, or, okay, I got it. Like, I'm going to go back into this relationship. And I'll always ask them, like, okay, did you reconfigure anything, or are you just going to use the old model and try to go forward?
Right.
And so that revitalized reconfiguration or recalibration is so important. Don't build a new house on a shaky foundation.
Right. Exactly.
Raise the thing, start over, level the playing field and then go. So, like you, going through that framework with people, going through that process, teaching them so that it does become a way of life. And, for people who have had really big struggles, sometimes they're going to need a guide. They're going to need, somebody who can, hold their hand and allow them to feel empowered, in the process. And I suppose that, those folks are more long-term clients, or they come back, as waves kind of surge up, they come back in, they do a body of work and off they go. But normally speaking, we try to ensure that they can have that framework to do it in their everyday life, to live it as their everyday life. So I am so curious, as I always am, more about your story and about, you had a life and then some things in your life changed and now you have this life.
Yes.
And
How did that happen?
I'd love to know more about how it happened and how you found your own breakthrough process.
Sure. So the place that I like to start is typically 2014, which is when I basically wrecking balled through my entire life. I took a match, threw it on my life, and blew it up.
It's interesting. It was also 2014 for me. So just saying.
And I've heard that before. Many people, that was not the best year for. This was a pretty dark hole I was in. I left my husband. I split up the kids. It was a really, really hard time. Friends abandoned me. They didn't understand where I was. And then a couple months later, after like a stint in the hospital, a doctor finally had me diagnosed correctly as having bipolar type 2. Instead of being medicated and helped for depression and anxiety, which was always the case for 20 years before that. So it was a big sort of moment that this particular doctor found and was like, this has been missed. And I was like, yes, and it's partly ruining my life. So once I got that on track in 2015, and this comes in, this part will make sense now. I'm signing my divorce papers in an auto body shop.
Of course, why not?
Because there's a notary there. And it has to be in front of a notary. And I look over and I'm like sobbing, even though I wanted it. It's just like the worst, just the whole situation stunk. And I look over and there's a Ralph Waldo Emerson poem. And it says something about if someone has breathed easier because of you. And I read that sentence and it said, and I said to myself, you know what? I'm at my rock bottom right now for the last year. And I'm in the depths of my despair. You can strip me of everything, but you can't take my breath. Because I read that sentence about breathing. And I turned around. This Jewish girl from Philly turns around who doesn't get tattoos, goes to the tattoo parlor and gets this. I write it on a napkin and I get it, put a tattoo on my hip. Now, there's a reason I'm saying it's on my hip, but I'll tell that later. I put that on my hip because I was going to have it close to me. It was going to be just mine. It wasn't for people to see. And you can't take that from me, right? So fast forward, I go back to get my MBA, my executive MBA. I meet someone, we get engaged. I build my life back brick by brick. I'm in pharmaceutical sales. And then I start I leave corporate, decide to get my MBA, start a little consulting firm so I can make ends meet while I'm putting myself through my master's degree. Get engaged. That clearly didn't work out, but the MBA did. And I come out in about March of 2020, that's when COVID hit. It's right when I met Mike Paterano, and we just instantly bonded. As you know how he is. So it's like he's that keyed in, and we are just totally a match as far as like twin flames or whatever it is that makes us soul partners. And we started to talk about our journeys, and he's obviously going through his stuff and I'm going through mine. And COVID was like, you're not getting a corporate job. So I'm like, what am I going to do? I don't want to do pharmaceutical consulting for the rest of my life. This is not me. And we started talking about the word breath because of how important it was to me. And we decided to look at our journeys and see what would mirror this word. What kind of framework, what's an acronym that we can make that would mirror what we've been through? So that's where we got begin to healing in breath, those letters. And we thought to ourselves, this is so amazing. We've both gone through this journey, both separate and together. We would be remiss not to share this with people. So that's when we started coaching people and bringing this to light. And it started off really small, but then it got bigger and bigger. Podcast started, and we decided to, like I said before, take these people to Soul Center. We started the Soul Center Experience Live. We have our own network. We started a team, and Annie Leib, LLC is the name of the company. And that's what it's kind of, that's my breakthrough. Like, so, but the part about that I wanted to say between Mike and me was that he said the word 𝐒𝐚𝐠 to me one time. And I said, what did you say? He said 𝐒𝐚𝐠. I said, how do you know what that word is? That's a Yiddish word. That means truth. And he just knew it from hearing it when he was little. I guess his adopted mom or something had said it. It was a very obscure word. So as I'm talking to him one day, I'm like, I'm going to get my other side of my hip tattooed. I'm going to put warrior. I'm going to put something, right? So he's like, you got to put 𝐒𝐚𝐠. I'm like, you know what? Not only do I have to put that on my body, but I'm not putting it on my hip. I'm putting it on my wrist, because this is for everyone to see, because this means truth, and it doesn't need to be hidden. It doesn't need to be just mine. I'm showing up in my truth. This is who I am. I'm not going to apologize for it anymore. And I'm going to tell my story to the world, because people need to see that you can break through. People need to see that you can go from darkness to light. People need to see that you can find your soul center. And that doesn't mean, Sage, that every day is peaches and cream. It just means that, I have this little bit of protection in me that, like, my worth isn't being affected by bad things that happen. Like, people can say what they want. You can get attention on a post or not, or your show can be really popular or not, or you can get clients or not. None of that matters. What matters is how you feel about yourself. And living in this soul-centered life aligned with my core values, which PS, my overarching core value is personal freedom. So being free to be me, unapologetically and authentically, has set me free. So being free to be me actually set me free. So that, in a way, was my breakthrough. And that's my little story.
Oh, I have so many questions. I don't even know where to begin. Yeah, it's so interesting how much of your story kind of mirrors my own. The last, rendition of my story, and interesting how 2014. I don't. When I look back at it, for me, I didn't drop the divorce card. My ex actually dropped the divorce card on the table at dinner. We'd never talked before before.
Wow. That's a little
And
bit dramatic and shocking.
yes, it was in fact dramatic and shocking.
Yes, I would think so.
But I think for me, there were so many things about the relationship that were unhealthy that I'd watched myself go away.
Oh, wow.
And I had,
That's a really interesting way to say it. Because I know just what you mean. You watched yourself almost in a movie. Like,
yeah,
wow.
yeah.
I just have to plug in my computer, but I'm listening. Keep going.
Yeah, no problem. It's life, right? It
Yeah,
doesn't
I mean,
matter
it's
if
like
you're on the screen, you're here.
sorry, everyone. Okay.
No problem. So, I remember that feeling like I have this opportunity, and I haven't thought about this in years, but I was screenwriting with a partner at the time, and he lived in Murrieta, which is about an hour away. And we decided we were going to meet one of our actresses that we were interviewing for a role. And we decided we would meet at one of the local wineries because it was sort of like a nice place to meet and, didn't have to go in the office and it was closer to him. And I got there before him and I was sitting at a table and I was sitting inside the winery and I was facing the doors. And as I was sitting there facing the doors, which were closed, waiting for him to come in, and I knew he'd be there momentarily, and the actress wasn't coming for, like half hour more. And I'm sitting there and I'm staring at the doors, and I can't take my eyes off the doors. And as the doors opened and he walked in, I had this amazing urge to run. And I realized it wasn't those doors that I wanted to run through. I realized I'd been waiting for a long, long time behind closed doors, desperate to get free of the unhealthy relationship, desperate to like run through the doors back into my own life where I could be myself. And so when you talk about, the personal freedom being there sort of at the crux of everything, it's strange that that was the moment more than any other moment because it was so visceral. I was
Yes.
still so trapped in kind of the trauma bond of it all that I didn't even realize how desperate I was to run.
Sure. It's so funny. You bring up that story and you said about watching yourself. And it reminded me of when I was really, really in the depths of despair. I mean, darkness. I couldn't see in color. I saw it in black and white. Like that was the veil that covered me. I was seeing life was in black and white. It reminds me of you watching yourself in that. Because it's like, I mean, I was like to a point where, I would pray that the sun wouldn't come up. I could not face another day, that kind of depression.
Yep.
And, to be able to be here now, and this doesn't, again, I want to reiterate, doesn't mean every day I feel like an exuberant, I'm pretty energetic, but like, it doesn't mean every day I'm like psyched, but I'm more psyched for every day than I've ever been before in my life. I'll tell you that. Like and I think part of it, Sage, is that there's such a stark contrast between when you're in that despair and when you're not free. And then when you get free, you realize it's like, wow, so I'm going to really be grateful for today because I know what it's like not to have this.
Yeah. 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 I think one of the feelings is if like oxygen has been put back in the room.
Yes.
When you're in that place of despair, your body just starts to shut down and you either withdraw in or you just desire to go away. And for me, it felt like there was no longer any oxygen in the room and I knew that it would kill me.
Suffocated. Yeah.
Yeah. And finding that space is so interesting. Poor Ben Graziosi, who was my writing partner at the time, he walked in, he sat down, and I burst into tears.
He's like, whoa,
Poor guy, like, whoa!
Like, you just walked through the doors.
Former Air Force staring at me like, okay, what's going on? And I said, oh, it's got, nothing to do with you. It's totally, I just had the aha moment. I've had this epiphany. And, he was a great guy. He was able to just kind of stay there with me and, helped reorient me before the actress walked through the door, and
Mhm. But you remember that as being such a turning point for you. I know
totally.
those moments for sure where you're like, that was when I realized, and it all just came over me and I got it. But before that, and then you think back, at least I do, I think back and I'm like, what was I doing before that I didn't pick up on this?
Yeah.
Like, what was I doing? But we were just hiding. It's scary. It's
Yeah.
scary to see the truth.
Well, and I think that, when you're in relationship, when you're a mom, when you have work that calls your attention, all of that stuff can be so distracting,
Mhm.
and we can hide from the truth.
Yes.
We can sort of just immerse ourselves in the little bubble, and
Or
it
the stuff that you're feeling gets, gets projected onto all of those things. Like,
oh,
I'm
yeah.
not sleeping because of the kids, and
Right.
or this is just really hard. I have kids that are 26 months apart. Like, this is hard. No wonder I'm not happy. And then it just keeps going and
Right.
going. And I remember I remember looking in the mirror and being so angry at myself because I had these two beautiful, healthy children. And I was like, why are you not happy?
Yeah.
That was like a major moment I remember. Like, and I would shame myself. What is wrong with you? You have it all. And then, after I realized, like, this is chemical, a lot of this is chemical, and this is stuff that trauma that I have to face. And,
Yeah.
it wasn't just that I was bratty and not happy, like I
Right.
didn't, it wasn't like that, but people around you don't get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just be happy, just be positive. It's like, that was the answer. I think I would
Right.
do.
We'd all just make that choice. Yeah,
Right.
I think that sometimes, looking within my own family, so much biochemistry has had to be corrected along the way.
Mhm.
And without that correction, without the assistance or support of medication, and that doesn't mean not therapy, not meditation, not breath work, like,
Right. A lot of work.
but, if there is something, if you are lagging biochemically, if you are serotonin depleted, people don't understand with serotonin, it's our joy juice, it
Mhm.
is
Mhm.
what sits on our brain floor to cause us to feel good. And if
Mhm.
it's not there in sufficient quantity, we don't feel good.
Right. And
Like, it
people
doesn't
that don't
matter
know
how hard
people.
we try.
It's not trying. It's not like, I remember one time somebody said to me, well, you just have to like drink water and go outside. And I was like, oh, that must be the answer. Because I
Yeah.
haven't tried either of those. That's going to cure me of this anxiety that the sun's coming up every day. And how am I going to live through another day? Like, are you serious? But
Yeah.
the shame of it is, now more people are understanding mental health, but it's just so misunderstood. People are so, and there's such a stigma still. And, I'd like to work toward helping to erase that stigma that this is, just because you can't see it and touch it,
Right.
not a broken leg, right? I mean, I remember just being really like, in a stage, like really sick and being like, I wish I was in the hospital, because then people would say she's in the hospital, right? And
Get it.
then you get to this better place, or this world that I'm living in now, in this space that, I'm humbled. Like, I still remember. I'm not like, that's never going to happen to me again. I do have this in my body as a chemical imbalance, but I also know my triggers. I've worked through so many things that can help me. I have the right doctors and just the right approach to it, which thank God, but I just want to help other people heal. And I know what it's like to be in trauma. I know what it's like to be in darkness. And so that's what I try to apply in my everyday life, just helping others heal. And that heals me, which is amazing.
Absolutely. It's interesting, the notion of, they used to call it the wounded healer. Okay, well, I don't I don't think I'm wounded anymore. I think I've worked through so much, and yet there are things that we have to deal with and we have to be
Mhm.
responsible for, and mental health is a big one. My whole gig is on helping leaders be authentic. And, just like you, getting into the soul center, being able to be clear enough so that people can see and hear them. And yet, I think one of the biggest questions and concerns that I hear from the leaders that I work with is, when you have a bipolar 2, when you have for me, cancer, when you have the, depression, when you have these anxiety, when you have these things, how can you be a leader, be empowered, and not, cause your team to worry about you?
Mhm.
How can you lead and be a great, um, journeyman is the word that comes up, like be a great servant to your
Mhm.
clients, to your team, to your children when you have this thing. And I can't count the number of people who say, well, it's okay if I am just talking to my C-suite, but I don't want the rest of the company to know.
Right.
It's okay if my family knows, but I don't want to be open about that on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever.
Yeah.
Even, I have multiple myeloma and I am just about to start a 6-month treatment protocol that will allow me to have stem cell or bone marrow transplant. And I'm a pretty private person. And a colleague of mine said, you cannot live an authentic life and then just sort of step out of the public eye for 6 months and then come back.
Mhm.
Like,
It won't be
you
you. It won't be in your
right,
truth.
you can't do that, exactly. And your wrist and my, that's so funny that I love that card that I pulled, the crow is all about
Yes,
truth, right?
it
Speaking your
is.
truth, and there it is right on your wrist.
Yes.
And this colleague said, I'm going to ask that every week you film your Wisdom Wednesdays and you let it be about your cancer journey. And I remember when he said it, my first thought was, "Excuse my German, but no fucking way."
Yeah.
And then my second thought was like, "Are you kidding me?" Like,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
like nobody will ever hire me again because they'll think, "Oh my
Mm.
god, you're dying." Like, like, well, the reason I'm doing the treatment is so that I don't have to die,
Right.
for
And, like,
and
that's so not that's your own narrative that, and you
totally. La,
have
la,
to
la,
put
la, la.
yourself out there. Yeah, I get it. Of all people, you're talking to someone that puts themselves out there every day, where I'm
Yeah.
just like, "Here's what's going on." I get it. I mean, and I also get the, "Do I wanna share this part?"
Yes.
But, there are the reason that I have the community that I do on LinkedIn is because I've shown up real. Like that's the reason. It's not because I have such an interesting story or because I'm some rocket scientist. It's because I just show up as me. And people are like, "Wow, that's really refreshing." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"I'm glad it's not boring you because this is just what's going on in my life."
Yeah.
But, and so you get it, and as you do it, you're going to see that it helps you heal. It's
Oh,
just going to
yeah.
help you with your healing
And
journey.
and not just me. Then suddenly
Someone else. Yeah.
people I don't even know
Yep.
or
Yep.
are now getting to know are stepping in to say, "I'll pray for you. Thank
Yes.
you. I need that,"
Yes.
They're stepping in to say, this is the conversation that so many people won't have. We are all human, for God's sakes,
Yep.
like, yes, I get it. We are the consciousness that resides within the human, but we all wear this human, and sometimes the human breaks down or it reconfigures and, okay. But we got to
Yeah.
deal with the human. The human's got biochemistry, it's got hormones. Like,
Yeah.
somehow we can talk about menopause, but we can't talk about, having an illness or,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
so I love the fact that you do lead with your story. I love the fact that my colleague just said, like, all right, gauntlet thrown, like, all right, go.
Yeah. Bring it.
And I
Yeah.
remember the first video I put out was, like probably 10 hours later. And I thought, no, I'm going to do this thing. And I just posted my 10th video yesterday. And I'm getting closer and closer to this first chemotherapy protocol. And, you know, I'm probably getting a little bit more anxious
Mhm.
because it's an unknown. It's not,
Yeah.
I don't feel afraid because I don't have any reason to feel afraid. I don't have any previous story with chemotherapy, you know, but there's sort of the unknown, like, I don't know,
But
doctor says
you
I'm going to be
you have
able to work. I don't know.
yeah. you have a lot of people that want to support and love you too. And letting that guard down to have people do that is really hard. I mean, I get it. That I get. Like, I'm good. Yeah. I don't need help. I don't need help. It's like, no, it's not about needing help. It's about having support in your life. It can only help you. It can only, make you feel more loved. So, everybody has to let their guard down a little with that.
Yeah. I so many of my colleagues, we've had this, this conversation, like, I don't know, 8,000 times, right? About, who's your perfect client? I've decided I don't like this question, but I realized that I didn't like the question because I looked and I'd say, I work across industries. I don't like, what are you talking about? And so one day, a colleague of mine came in and she said, I figured out who my perfect client is. And I said, great, who? And she said, it's me. And she went and described herself. And I was like, oh my God, you're right. Like, that is perfect for you.
Yes.
You're going to be great at coaching people who have been through just what you've been through. Of course, the next 24 hours, I couldn't sleep at all.
Yeah.
And I'm going through like, I'm kind of a complicated human. Like, I've been through a lot of stuff,
Right.
wherein lies this perfect client. And I realized that my clients are warriors. They're like me, and there's something that we have in common and something that we will have in common. And I learned, because of a history of trauma, I learned to be a come hell or high water gal. Get it done, pull up your bootstraps, put on your game face, compartmentalize it, just get it done. Go on to the next thing.
Yep.
Yeah. And that was great because it allowed me to survive. But when I really wanted to engage in that thriving journey, I realized that I could no longer live behind the mask.
Yes.
I couldn't breathe. People couldn't see me. They couldn't read my lips, and the suit of
armor. You were
armor
muffled. They couldn't hear you either.
blocked me.
Yes.
And so the whole journey into becoming a wise warrior is, knowing when to use armor when you're really in a dangerous situation, and knowing when to set down your armor, to take off your mask, and to live from, as you said, that soul-centered place, that the place where you can be authentic and transparent. And, I'm right here again. I realized that, being able to meet others like myself who've been through complex, complicated lives, and yet who really, really want to embrace the simplicity of just living your truth. And it's, I finally don't shudder when people say, who's your perfect client? I just have to laugh, like, okay, okay, let me describe who I am. Let me describe what I'm up to,
Yeah. That's an
and
awesome story.
let me describe where I've been. So I have one more question that is maybe the deeper space. When you think back to 2014, and it's very funny that you and I use the same expression, like set fire to your life. What was the impetus to do it? I mean, it was that you opened the door with that match, and you may not have known it at the time. But
so what happened? I had a manic episode. So I didn't know that I had mania. So I was like, really, like, I am great. I don't know what you guys are talking about, but this is what I want. I don't want this anymore. I want this. And I just went to start my life as a single woman with kids. And I had a breakdown because that's not how life works. And your marriage just isn't, and it hurt a lot of people. And it was the episode that sort of, and I stayed there for quite some time because until I was diagnosed and properly medicated. And what happens when you go up, you got to come down. So that's what happened that was June of 2014. And then in December of 2014, that's how long it took. So I was in the real darkness at the end of 2014. And I went to the hospital, and that's when I met my doctor, and they were like, okay, this makes sense now.
I can't believe that you went that long without somebody accurately diagnosing you and treating you.
20 years of my life. 20 years of my life. But I refuse, Sage, this is one thing that I always say. I refuse to look at it and say, oh, God, I hurt for 20 straight. This happened for 20. No, every single thing happened as it was supposed to. Doesn't mean I didn't hurt people. Doesn't mean I didn't hurt myself. Doesn't mean I didn't make mistakes. But I would never be able to be the founder of this company that changes lives every day had I not gone through those experiences. So I'm grateful, as crazy as that sounds, for all of those things, all of those times.
Yeah, I love that, here as we end our show, that's where we're landing, because there are a lot of people who are, it's so dear. They send me again, excuse my German, fuck cancer post.
Yeah.
And what's so interesting is that I don't actually I don't relate well to that, because I know exactly why this showed up. I've had divine 2x4 therapy before. This is a much more aggressive looking version. And I know exactly the day it showed up. I know exactly why. And I know why it needed to stay, which is the harder thing for most people. I've lived in the integrative world for so long. I'm trained in integrative medicine. I know how to heal myself with food and exercise and light and vibrational medicine. And yeah, I know how to do that. But if the cancer had left my body, the likelihood that I would have climbed back into that old life where I was drowning, very high.
Yeah.
I know that syndrome. I know that I just know it, I totally would have been there. And so I needed the time. I'm on year 5 with this thing, and I now have an opportunity to be on the other side of it and not to die to it. And let me change that to when the transplant works, I will literally be living a new life. I'll literally all of the contents of my bone marrow will have been eradicated and replaced. Talk about, I'll have a new human form.
Yeah.
And so I totally embrace why this has showed up for me. I don't hate it. I may feel differently when I'm, have no hair and puking my guts out, but that's fine. I may have moments. They may be dark.
Yeah.
We all have bad days, but I don't look back and think like, oh my God, why that happened to me? Like, I look at all the trauma I've been through, and while I wouldn't want anyone else to go through that, I embrace that it allowed me to be someone that other people can relate to across industries and through so many different traumas and tragedies. And I love that you're able to look at those 20 years and say, I don't want somebody else to go through that. I'm going to be out with my story. And if I talk about my symptoms and other people go, oh my God,
Wait a minute,
wait,
that's me.
maybe I should talk to a different doctor.
Yeah, exactly.
That somebody else's life will be changed. It's not even maybe changed, but will be changed. So
Yes.
I love what you guys have done and are doing. I'm so
Thank you.
excited for you, and I'm so excited just every opportunity I have to get to know you, whether it's through your posts or sharing shows. I just love it.
Thank you for asking me to be on. I'm very grateful. It was great.
So my
glad I
pleasure.
got the computer set up and I got it plugged in. Everything worked out. I'm so glad.
Yeah, absolutely.
But thank you. I really appreciated it. A great time with you.
Thank you so much for being here and for doing the work you do.
Talk to you soon.
This is Dr. Sage Breslin, and this is Breaking Through with Dr. Sage Breslin. See you next time.